On this episode of AV Week, we take a look at where the state of AV over IP is landing, what technology in the industry should go bye-bye, and take a look back at CES 2022 and its impact on the commercial AV space. All that and more next on AV Week.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is AV Week, episode 542, recorded Friday, December 7th, 2022. Wink, wink.
Support for AVNation is brought to you by
At Lona, the go-to provider for AV signal distribution and control in corporate, higher education, and residential spaces.
and by
Just Add Power, the global leader in video over IP solutions with systems that give you easy installation, unmatched scalability, and outstanding performance.
This is AV Week, your weekly wrap-up of audio-visual news and information. My name is Tim Albright. I am your host. With us to discuss the news and information we have gathered this week. First and foremost, we say from parts unknown, we know where she lives and where she works. We just don't say it on the air. Her name is Dawn Mead. You know her as AV Dawn. Welcome, ma'am.
Hi, Tim. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Also with us is my buddy, Mr. Willie Franklin. I met Willie about a year ago or so. Otterbein University is where he resides. Welcome, sir.
Hey, thanks, Tim. Good to be back.
All right. And last but not least, from the Great White North, Mr. Matt D. Scott from Omega Audio Video, but also the host of our Resi Week program. Welcome, sir.
Hello, Timothy. How are you?
I am fabulous.
Excellent. I'm very happy for you.
I'm watching my watch to see how long it takes Matt to make fun of my hair. So it seems to be something.
Grandma, I would never make fun of you.
There it is. All right. First story comes to us from darn near anything, any news outlet on the planet. Consumer CES 2022 happened this week. It happened in person, put on by the Consumer Technology Association, the CTA. I say CES without naming or defining that acronym because, well, it's just called CES now. It used to be called the Consumer Electronics Show. CTA a number of years ago said, nope, it's just called CES. It's more than just consumer electronics. A number of things came out of it. I personally went for the first time ever, and I'll talk about that in a second. But first, and Don, we'll start with you on this. From your perspective and someone not going to it, what was the news that you were reading that kind of struck your interest?
Honestly, the biggest thing that struck my interest was a lot of the tech publications were calling it the zombie show because of the COVID restrictions and the new Omicron variant that was coming through. And all the pictures I saw of CES basically consisted of, plywood floors and little boxes with QR codes on top and not much else. So theoretically, there was some cool stuff there for those of you that got to go. But the way it was reported in the media that I saw was kind of like tens of people came and we saw couples of products.
So the one booth that she's talking about, LG, took their booth. They showed up, but they put their entire thing down in plywood and put QR codes on the benches, which I thought was very interesting. Samsung certainly was there. Yeah, Samsung was certainly there. Canon was there, and I'll talk about them in a second. Sony was there, and there were certainly some products that I took away from a commercial standpoint. Willie, from your perspective and the media that you were watching, what did you take away?
Oh, it hurts that I was not able to attend. COVID has just kind of ramrodded our ability to get out of the house here with regards to leaving campus and attending events such as that. So aside from conversation with peers, reading information online, and continuing to try to stay abreast of what's happening in the industry, I guess I was an absent zombie for the event.
That'll work. Matt D. Scott, where you were one of these people that have been trying to get me to go to this thing for years. What were your takeaways?
I'm glad you got to go. It was great.
I did.
Yeah, I loved watching you go. I'm just glad it was half a show. I followed it, and I'll say a couple of things. One, there was a lot of punching down at that event, which I found to be annoyingly frustrating. to Don's point, there was a lot of media that was harassing it for companies dropping out and stuff like that, which we've seen. And what frustrated me this time more so than even some of the previous shows is we know this is going to happen. We know that for the next little bit, companies will plan to go to shows, and a month out, they'll decide to show up or they'll decide to cancel. And, there's multiple reasons why they're doing that. I think the story of harassment over that is done. Like, get over it. They're making decisions based on whatever they're making those decisions. It's fine. I don't need to read a ton of articles about it. From a tech standpoint, there were a couple really cool things that stood out to me. The biggest one that I saw that I fell in love with was the new BMW with their exterior color change, which is just friggin' beautiful. And I can't wait to see how that tech progresses into other spaces. From the AV side, there was, your regular litany of cool new TVs and all of that fun stuff. The other surprising thing, which I'm sure you don't want me to bring up, but there's a bunch of cheerleaders that were very excited to go to this show who were not excited to go to any other freaking show in our industry because it's so unsafe. But they all were perfectly happy to go to Las Vegas and wear a big KN95 and talk about how great it was to be there with a KN95, as if they couldn't go to Infocom or ISC with the same stinking mask and be just as safe. I personally am stuck in my stinking country, so I could not go. Otherwise, I would have been there, but I would have been at all the other ones too. That kind of rubbed me the wrong way.
All right, well, we'll take each of those in turn. First,
send your hate mail to @MattDScott on Twitter, and I will respond.
So here's where I'll this is my observation from CES. First of all, I am no longer a popular person in my house because Tom Holland was at CES, and I missed my opportunity to go see him or take a picture for my daughter. So there was that. Yeah, Don, he was there. Yeah,
at the Sony booth.
In the Sony booth, talking about Uncharted, and he's a little guy, my understanding. But John Siaka is the one that took the picture, so that's all relative because John's like a 7-foot giant. But there was certainly no, I didn't. So I did bring her a CS Daily though, so that there was that. With
I'm sure that was the same. That was identical.
There was, I mentioned the Canon has a new product called AMLOS, AMLOS. That is going to make some impacts on UC. It allows you to take one 4K camera, split up the room 4 different ways. One of the things that they do with it is take the whiteboard and keystone it, auto keystone it into where it's in the environment as if it's straight on, right? And then it auto ghosts you if you're writing on the board. So suddenly the words can be auto populating and writing on the board automatically. Also, I will kind of give up on OLED, which pains Dawn me and me. Mini LED is certainly one of those things out there, both from TCL and from Samsung. That's very interesting, and I think that's going to have an impact on the industry. As far as events and people going, so there was a lot made about, at least from the U.S. press, about not going. The Verge made a big deal about it. Gizmodo made a big deal about it. The folks that you would normally see there made a big deal about not going. When in the events that I went to, and we went to some preview events, there was a number of foreign press there. So folks not only that, had English accents, but had accents or just spoke a language other than me. And there goes Dawn. So I'll just keep talking until she gets back. But to Matt's point about folks that didn't feel safe going to Infocom and have said they don't feel safe going to ISC, I don't think that they've said they don't feel safe. What they're claiming is that exhibitors don't want to go. And I think that's a different setup or a different statement.
There was a lot
Oh, yeah.
Or maybe not a lot. There's a fair number of people who bemoaned how unsafe it would be to go to
Because it was in
InfoComm.
Florida. Yeah. Yeah.
Not just Florida, but yes.
And that was part of their argument. Now, I actually had dinner with two of those folks who were bemoaning that. I tested when I got there. I will test again a couple more times this week after having gotten back from Vegas. My statement has always been: if you don't feel safe, then don't go. Right? That's my statement on ISD. That's my statement on InfoComm. If you don't feel safe, don't go. I do know that you mentioned the fact that people were pulling out of CES a month out. There was people pulling out 2 weeks out, including like Google and Facebook and some high tech ones. So we'll see. We'll see what happens with ISD coming next couple of weeks.
And that's been the same for every show.
Yeah.
Let me interject a question as we talk about the aspect of safety and perhaps people not feeling safe as a reason for not going. That may be true, and I can't speak for those who decided not to attend. But I wonder if the underlying issue is basically social shaming. Working on a university campus with 3,000 resident students, our student population, our COVID count was extremely low this past year and continues to be so. I certainly want to believe we're doing a great job of mitigating any risk management issues. But from a larger standpoint, I think people are generally safe. So when I think about those conferences, I truly wonder whether the decision was not wanting to be a representative of company XYZ and be in attendance for fear of social shaming versus concern about public health. We see healthcare professionals certainly masked up, gowned up, they're wearing gloves, but we also see a lot of us interacting in work environments and home environments, and going to the grocery store, and we're not hugely impacted by COVID. Now, I could be mistaken because I'm not a healthcare professional, but what I'm gathering and listening to media reports and listening to interviews of healthcare professionals, we certainly have issues with people who engage in super spreader events, minus protection, minus vaccination, regardless of how one feels about being vaccinated. So again, going back to my first question, is the issue concern? Is the primary issue a concern over personal safety, or is it a concern over branding and social shaming? So I'll rest with no evidence to support that, but I think it's worth some bit of a conversation.
Certainly it is, and it is something. I don't think it's a question that can be answered, at least not honestly, not publicly, right? I think that's a question that you might get an official somewhere or an executive somewhere to tell you off the record, Willie. I don't think that anybody would admit to that on the record. Is my sense. Somebody may just say, somebody can disagree with me and prove me wrong, right? If somebody from Google wants to call me up and say, hey, officially we did it because of public shaming. Sure, cool, awesome, groovy. I don't think that's going to happen though.
As I think about InfoComm this year, as I think about CES and other opportunities where I would have had the opportunity to travel and attend in person, travel was heavily curtailed for two reasons on campus. One, certainly from a budget standpoint, and that was understandable. The other was concern over traveling to an area and perhaps engaging in a practice that may not have been right. When I think about the holidays and my travels and visiting with family and the testing prior to and the testing upon my return, I have no positive COVID results to share, nor do any of my family members. And I know all experiences vary, as do personal behavior. But again, speaking specifically for me and my institutions, our concern was more along the lines of accountability and risk management, almost doubtful, and I don't want to misspeak here. I want to be careful how I organize my sentence, but just thinking about risk management on my campus. If you travel, the expectation was you would be extremely safe, not only to protect yourself, but not to put the institution at risk, if that makes sense. So again, I do find myself being a little suspect of companies that pulled out for fear of safety, or was the larger concern a standpoint of, again, public shaming for attending said event?
Thanks so much for watching this first segment of AV Week. To check out the rest of the episode for free, click on the link below and go by the website, avnation.tv. That's avnation.tv.